GameStop recently announced a plan to buy Bitcoin. I thought that's what we wanted. Why is the stock selling off? Now, this article doesn't mention specifically how they're buying this Bitcoin. They are not using the cash that's on their balance sheet. They're going to use convertible notes. Sort of a page out of Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy or strategy. And this Bitcoin strategy has worked well for MicroStrategy. But Wall Street strategists, a lot of the use of the word strategy or strategists, Wall Street strategists are hesitant to conclude that GameStop investing in Bitcoin would mean the video game retailer stock has upside. And I quote by WEBULL analyst Michael Patcher. The company's strategy, which has changed about 6 times in 3 years, is now that they're going to buy crypto and be just like MicroStrategy. The problem with that thinking is MicroStrategy trades at about 2 times their Bitcoin holdings. If GameStop were to buy all the Bitcoin with their $4.6 billion in cash and trade at 2 times their Bitcoin holdings, the stock would drop $5. Oh look, it dropped $5.50. Well, the stock has dropped over $5. Is it a buy now, WEBULL analyst? We'll see if that analyst comes back with a different tune about Bitcoin now that it's dropped where he thinks it would drop, if they do utilize all their cash to buy Bitcoin and trade at 2 times their Bitcoin holdings. Now, this article does mention the senior convertible notes. And as we know, this is the $1.3 billion that's going to be raised, but this is with the use of senior convertible notes due in 2030 to buy Bitcoin. Now, this is a strategy that MicroStrategy obviously has used. There's also a strategy that some of the Bitcoin miners have used, and now GameStop. And at times we do see an initial negative reaction because dilution. Under the latest sale, a round of convertible debt will require issuing 46 million shares of GameStop, bringing the company's cash to 6.1 billion, up from 4.8 billion. We suspect that GameStop's share price will drift lower to the issuance of the convert, particularly because a convert investor will receive a 0 coupon. They're not getting a 10% yield like MicroStrategy's recent Strife or Strike sale that can grow to 18%, I believe. And basically, they'll have to have faith that the GameStop meme phenomenon will persist for another 5 years. He's also doubtful that GameStop will see the type of impact that MicroStrategy saw because of its already high valuation. GameStop is valued at $12.7 billion, more than twice the cash balance after the convertible is issued. And on that convertible note news, we did see a massive sell-off. The largest daily candle sell-off we have seen in quite a while, since May of 2024 probably, something like that. Now, one zone to look out for is around our low point, this $22 area. We did bounce off of it as a support. It was a resistance prior. We're going to want to see this hold as a support, see a nice bounce. I personally think we'll see GameStop sell off a little bit more before we try to establish a support. Either we will hold this 22 and break out of this descending trend line that we got rejected out of, or we're going to fail 22 and we're going to head to these lower levels, potentially $20, psychological 20. Now, back in April of 2024, so almost a year ago now, GameStop was half its value, half its price. I personally doubt we'll see those prices unless Bitcoin tanks, unless the Bitcoin 4-year cycle ends early. In that scenario, I could definitely see GameStop going back towards $10. However, if Bitcoin follows its cycle, I think we're unlikely to see a $10 GameStop. Keep an eye on a bullish divergence. We did have one right around this level recently before we ran from 21 to about $30. We saw the price coming down here, but the RSI formed a higher low here while the price formed a lower low. This did actually mark a reversal, and like I said, it went from about $21.80 to almost $30. So as for GameStop, I would wait to see a bounce at this 22. If we just break under it, I would look for the psychological 20. I would like to see an attempt of a support held, not just ugly red candles like this continuing to sell off. I would wait personally. But what's your plan? Are you just going to DCA into GameStop? Are you going to avoid it? Are you going to wait till the trend is looking more positive for GameStop or Bitcoin? Before I get into this, one thing to realize with GameStop is if they used all their cash available to buy Bitcoin, this convertible note offering obviously adds to that. In terms of publicly traded companies, I believe they'd only be under Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy. They would hold more than CleanSpark, which holds a little over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin now. So they'd be among the top public traded companies that hold Bitcoin, which I do think would have a very positive effect for their stock when Bitcoin's in the right trend, when Bitcoin is actually going up. And we'll look at Bitcoin's chart in a second. It's still at a resistance point that we've been talking about. But first off, let's look at this. Samson Mao believes that Philippines and Indonesia are going to be the next Bitcoin nation states, adopting a strategic reserve, so to speak. Now, I don't know if you guys remember Bhutan and how they started to implement a Bitcoin strategy. This was probably a few years ago now, if I remember right. But Samson Mao brings up Bhutan's journey from a very poor country to the highest Bitcoin per capita country in the world. Bitcoin can transform a country very clearly. and it can lift it out of poverty, monetize stranded and wasted energy. By using their Bitcoin proceeds, Bhutan has begun financing significant infrastructure. I said that kind of weird, but I'm not going to repeat it. Including constructing an airport, a striking development for a country that once lacked the funds for such projects. And he just mentioned stranded energy and states how Bitcoin mining can turn underused or stranded energy into a national revenue stream. Mao suggests that other resource-rich countries may replicate Bhutan's model. He points to the Philippines and Indonesia, both known for their untapped geothermal capacity, prime candidates for state-level Bitcoin adoption. I believe there's a big opportunity for the Philippines and Indonesia to monetize their stranded energy, the geothermal potential. And Samson Mao believes that the executive order signed by Trump for a strategic Bitcoin reserve has lit a fire under international policymakers who worry about the US potentially moving first. This has prompted various governments to reassess their approaches to Bitcoin. And Mao says that certain government entities that once planned to move on Bitcoin adoption in later years, example 2027, are now shifting timelines up in an attempt to front run or at least keep pace with the US. Now he does point out some drawbacks, such as new regulatory or policy framework could take multiple months or even years to materialize. As a result, countries hoping to capitalize on the Bitcoin mining opportunity, or even just strategic reserve, acquiring Bitcoin in any way possible, face a shrinking window if they aim to outpace major economic powers like the US. Mao has also actively been involved in discussions regarding Bitcoin adoption in Indonesia. Now going back to the home front, going back to the US states push Bitcoin bills to boost reserves and crypto mining. And in March, states like Kentucky, North Carolina, Arizona have advanced major Bitcoin and crypto bills to grow reserves and support Bitcoin mining. In Kentucky, we have progress that came on March 24. The governor signed the Blockchain Digital Asset Act, or HB 701, into law. This law gives residents the right to hold their own Bitcoin, offers benefits to crypto mining companies. The Senate passed it with full support, 37-0. With access to coal and hydropower energy, Kentucky is positioning itself as a major mining hub. It currently holds 11% of the total US hash rate. Also, North Carolina, lawmakers introduced 3 bills to invest public money into digital assets. House Bill 506, Senate Bill 709, both allow up to 5% of state funds to go to digital assets. And H92, House Bill 92, pushes that number to 10% for strategic reserves. These proposals would allow the state to protect public funds from inflation and build long-term value through crypto investments. Lawmakers are aiming to pass the bills in the coming weeks. Arizona is also following a similar path. 2 bills, SB 1373 and SB 1075, were approved by the House Rules Committee. Not only that, but Oklahoma getting involved. The state's House recently passed HB 1203, the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Bill. The bill allows public funds from several state accounts to be invested in Bitcoin, stablecoins, and top-tier digital assets with a market cap only over $500 billion. More than 20 states are now considering similar plans. 23 of 50 states have introduced Bitcoin reserve bills. Remember, it was March 7 that the White House approved the creation of a federal strategic Bitcoin reserve. It feels like a long time ago, but it hasn't been long at all. Where are these states going to be at 3 months from now, 6 months from now? How many have approved? How many have been denied? How many new states are piling in? These are the questions you want to ask yourself. And looking at bitcoin.laws, I'll leave this down below for you guys. But look at that orange. We're just continuing to see more and more states adopting or working towards a Bitcoin strategic reserve or other positive legislation for Bitcoin. And I will leave this down below for you guys. Like I said, it shows the progress. It shows those that have failed so far. It shows those that are succeeding and getting close to these bills being enacted. Arizona's on top, with Oklahoma, Texas, Florida not that far behind. Now looking at Bitcoin, we still have this resistance to break out of, and we haven't done it yet. We just are trying to hover right around it, kind of following this sideways channel on shorter term time frames, following this ascending channel that started in early March, but on the broader scheme, falling down this descending trend that started in basically January of 2025. If we fail this blue line, if we fail this sideways action we've been in, we're likely to test our ascending channel, this support here at roughly 85,000. If we can hold this level up, we're likely to retest our descending trend. If we don't hold this up, we're likely to come and test either this low at 83.7 or potentially this support area at 80,000. Now here it is on the hourly. You can see that shorter term time frames a little better. You can see this clear ascending channel we've been in and this clear sideways channel we've been in ever since we've been just kind of hanging around this support. You'll notice we're seeing lower highs, but the lows are basically staying intact, staying around the same. We need to break this descending resistance, and we need to break it on a more important time frame, a time frame that makes it clear when we break it. So far, we just kind of go over it, and then it's a false breakout, falls back in. Go over it, false breakout, falls back in. People buy calls right here on the breakout and get screwed, basically. Similarly to here, a false breakout, we didn't get a candle to close, whips right back in. We need a breakout with a candle to close out of this descending resistance. Otherwise, we're likely to just keep seeing these fake outs. For the Bitcoin miners to recover, any Bitcoin plays, MicroStrategy, Gamestop now, we need Bitcoin to actually recover. We need Bitcoin to be going up and break out of this descending trend. We've been making progress so far. From March 11 at about 77, we've gained about $10,000 on Bitcoin. But we need more than that. So far, this is the trend, and we need to break this downtrend. The market wants to see Bitcoin break its trend before it wants to dabble into Bitcoin derivatives, into plays that will move up at a faster speed than Bitcoin or down at a faster speed than Bitcoin, depending on Bitcoin's direction. Bitcoin needs to give us a clear direction, and it isn't exactly doing that right now. And like I said last video, it's a very short-term sideways action with a short-term uptrend, with a midterm downtrend, with a long-term uptrend starting at the beginning of this cycle at 15K. We need to hold this ascending trend, but so far so good. We may approach it. I personally think we're going to see a pop after the tariff fears. After we get through that date, we may see a continued sell-off until that point. And keep in mind, tomorrow is Friday. Tomorrow is PCE. The market wants to see inflation coming down. I talked about that in a previous video. We won't get deep into that right now. That's another thing to look at for tomorrow, the PCE. And also, we're nearing the end of this month, which also means we're ending the quarter. Some people are worried that like the Bitcoin miners are going to see a massive loss because of FASB, because of Bitcoin losses from quarter to quarter. One thing to realize, where was Bitcoin at the beginning of January, which would mean the end of the last quarter, right? Well, Bitcoin on the end of last quarter, the end of Q4, Bitcoin was roughly $91,000. So we're about 5,000 down, or about 5% from where we ended last quarter. It's going to be a small loss from Bitcoin's price, not improving quarter over quarter, but we'll get into more of the expectations of Bitcoin once the quarter ends. We're getting close. You never know. Bitcoin could go up 5% by the end of this quarter, and we'll have a flat performance from the end of last quarter to the end of this quarter, which at least wouldn't hurt the Bitcoin miners having to take a loss on the Bitcoin they hold, unrealized loss on the Bitcoin they hold. But it's not going to be like last quarter where they benefited massive from FASB and seeing gains from Bitcoin from the beginning of that quarter to the end of that quarter. But anyways, how are you guys feeling about Bitcoin? Do you think we're going to finally break this descending resistance? Or do you think we get rejected, fail our ascending trend, and head down towards 80,000? These are all going to be important trends to watch: the descending resistance, the ascending support, and that sideways action we've been in. We may see a chain reaction from all of these soon. Also, I did want to point out that the 50 MA is another target we need to break out of. Once we break this descending resistance, our next test might be this 50 MA that's sitting at about 90K. But anyways, how do you guys feel about Bitcoin? Are we going to break out, or are we going to get rejected again? Also, what about GameStop? Are you considering GameStop? Do you need to see it level out first? Are you going to just DCA? Do you think it's going to be a good Bitcoin play moving forwards, moving into the end of this cycle? But anyways, thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.